Hey, this is going to be a long one. So I recommend either bookmarking it to come and have a look at later and or coming back and listening to this in the future because I'll be covering a lot of topics here and I'll also be including options to work with me if you choose to. No pressure around that. And also what other tools and techniques and strategies that you can use that can help you get your relationships to finally work. Okay. And while I've been in the relationship game for quite some time now, I still find that the advice out there, like it did to me, it kept me stuck. It kept me longing for solutions that were not going to give me the relationship that I wanted, which kept leading me around into compromising, self sacrificing, or feeling unworthy of when I did actually get the love from someone that could see me for who I was, I would run away from it. And until I found that the work that was required for me to prepare for a relationship was much more than some of the stuff that I'll be talking about in this video. So, if you're listening to this and you find some value in it, please throw it in the chat or the comment section. It's including the time of the time code in the video if that's useful to you, and other people that are watching this, because I really hope this video to be a new foundation for how I speak to helping people in their relationships with love, with true love, with attachment, with polarity, with presence, with everything, because I do see that life is relational. And if we have an issue with the relationship with ourselves, and I know it sounds a bit cliche, and you may have heard of that, where it's you are looking for the person, like you are looking for the person within yourself, and then the person that you attract just mirrors whatever's incomplete for you. And while that can be confronting for some people, and it's a philosophical outlook, it can be particularly challenging if you have attracted narcissists in the past, if you've attracted people in your life who have taken advantage of you or abused you, okay? And all of these dynamics can be traced back to childhood, where your body was betrayed to be listened to. Like you weren't trained to listen to your body. You weren't trained to show how to listen to all the common senses in the body, your instinct, okay? And then you're trained to think your way into and out of relationships, which why a lot of people end up just codependent and or stuck in a relationship that doesn't work for them, or they just stay single and this dating just get frustrated at the dating world because it just doesn't do it. It's just not a friendly and healthy place to relate. Okay. So in all of this, these people that are already giving you this similar advice, I do truly believe that they feel like they're helping. Like therapists and relationship coaches and people who use the verses from the Bible or Gottman or Esther Perel, all the Tony Robbins, if he's doing any relationship type work, all these people out there who are in the mainstream wanting to help people, getting Teal Swan, helping people with their relationships, I think do genuinely believe that they're helping people. And the first thing I'd do if you are going to listen to advice from someone is make sure that you're listening to people who know more than just the theory of relationships. Okay. And how do you test for that? Well, you look at their life. You see, do they have loving relationships? Do they have a relationship that looks and feels like it's the kind of relationship that you want? Okay. And just to quickly flex about my life, like Cassie and I, my wife, met each other through living our most fullest lives. Like we effectively took relationships off the table for this moment when we met. And then we connected in a share house purely on uh, bodily connection. And it was Cassie said to me, John, my body just wants to be around you. And then we explored that. Okay. So for me, my relationship with attracting people has been I can either go out and lean into someone, like ask them, hey, let's be in a relationship, let's make this exclusive, and or I've had times when women, I am a heterosexual man, uh, who women who would want to have a relationship with me, okay? And depending on how that sits for you, what I'm gonna speak to is you design the relationship that you want. And what I find in relationship work or people who have been rejected or hurt or betrayed in relationships is they do attempt to walk in other people's footsteps of what a correct relationship is for them. And what shows up there is you're not designing the relationship for you. You are either wanting to avoid rejection or secure security, right? Avoid rejection or secure security. And what happens there is you can hold back who you truly are, hold back what you really want in your relationships. And that can be because you've been so disappointed in the past that putting something out there that might actually mean something to you or is beyond your consensus like reality of what you've experienced of life or what you've seen in your parents relationship or friends relationships seems extraordinary. It seems beyond what you think you can get, so you don't put it there in a list or a or an embodiment of what you really desire. For example, if you're used to not being listened to and invalidated, and you just assume that that's how life's gonna be, how would you know any different when someone genuinely listens to you and wants to be around you? Sometimes how that can show up is you might think the other person who's genuinely interested in you or wants to get to know you is like you're disgusted by them and you think that they're weird. That's shown up before in my clients. That's shown up with Cassie and I. She thought I was weird because I loved her for who she was. It's like, yeah, cool. Feel your feelings. What's going on for you? Tell me. All right. What do you mean you want to hear my feelings? Like, yeah, I want to hear what's going on in your world. I'm curious, genuinely curious, not curious out of judgment or going to use it against you in future. Tell me, what is your life like? What are you feeling right now? What's going on in your body? Okay. So I've got a big list of things to go through in this. And yeah, sit back and listen. And if anything pops out to you, just throw it in the comments. If I've got any questions, I'll throw it in the comments. So the first thing is checklists. So why your relationships might not be working and what to do about it is checklists. And if you're writing checklists, it's not the checklist that's the issue. It's what are you really being honest with underneath it all, okay? Because checklists can also sound like, I want someone who loves me unconditionally, okay? I want someone who makes a lot of money. I want someone who I can behave any way that I want to, and they're going to love me, okay? So checklists that are in that particular instance of those examples that I gave are a projection of your shadow and what you fear, right? I think wanting someone to love you for your behavior is not really love. It can actually be a form of neglect, right? So if you're someone who has self-destructive habits, for example, I see life is a gift. Life is truly a gift. And if you're going to neglect that gift, wouldn't you want people in your life telling you, hey, that care about you, hey, I think you're neglecting your gift of life. Did you want to have a look at that addiction? Did you want to have a look at how um, you want to have a look at how you're operating your life? Do you want to have a look at your level of exercise or whatever it is? Are you really being true to yourself, or are you living out of a survival pattern? So checklists are great to just as an initial brainstorm, just as an initial, hmm, what what do I want here? And with checklists in particular, sometimes people need to start with what they don't want. Okay, start with what you don't want first and also feel that, okay? Because a checklist is really powerful to start to unpack what you've experienced in your past relationships, and it can bring emotional content to the surface to feel. Right? Feeling is a huge part to make your relationships work. Genuine feeling, okay? Genuinely feeling your feelings will help you in all of your relationship dynamics, okay? Not necessarily being able to give the feeling a name or the sensation a name, but just being with whatever's there. Sometimes shame can also feel like, well, shame actually has its own feelings. Sometimes excitement can feel like anxiety. Okay, sometimes excitement can feel like anxiety. Now, next, with checklists here is making sure that once you've got what you don't want, throwing a hook in the ocean of life to what you do want. And usually that can be the complete opposite. For example, you don't want someone who's poor. Okay, sure. All right, feel that. What's really underneath that? Okay, you want to feel supported. You want to feel well resourced. You want to feel like you don't have to be in the rat race anymore, even though there isn't really a rat race, right? Which could also mean a deeper sense of, well, what are you doing? In what are you doing to bring in whatever revenue that you want to? And is there a sense of purposelessness in your life? Do you feel like work is a grind for you? So underneath relationship dynamics, there can also be a spiritual dynamic of, well, what's the point of it all? What's the point? What am I here for? Who am I here for? What am I doing? So in the concept of being poor, so, well, I want someone who's wealthy, right? And then you might try that out. You find someone who's wealthy, but then realize that someone who has money also has a lot of options, right? And that's not to say you can't find someone with who's loyal or someone who's willing to be with you, but it also means, well, can you be well resourced without money? Can you feel that there's something in the relationship that's beyond money? Can you feel like you're so well resourced by yourself first? And like I mentioned at the start here, is going to be about, can you be the lover that you've always dreamed about? Can you be the person that loves yourself so much that your ideal partner, your person, naturally gravitates and is attracted to you, which is actually love. Like, love is a form of attraction. Love is the force of attraction. Okay, energy of attraction. So back to the checklist piece. Choosing someone who's wealthy. What is wealth to you? What is wealth? Is wealth community? Is it dollars in a bank account? Is it house? Is it mortgage? Is it job? Is it career path? And the last piece on checklists here is, if all of those things were gone, could you still make the relationship work? Like, what would be your non-negotiables with a checklist? What would be your non-negotiables in a checklist? And this all relates to how much you invest in the relationship, what your word is, and guilt can show up here too. Guilt can keep people together instead of the devotion of, oh, I actually genuinely love you. I actually genuinely love you. I want to be around you. When guilt becomes a motivator, then the relationship has a trajectory for exhaustion, has a trajectory of resentment, has a trajectory of adultery. Okay. Next point here. That's checklists. Next point is dating without knowing your survival patterns. Okay. So how you are watching this video today, how you have come to exist in the body that you are today, from a series of survival patterns. And survival patterns can include disassociating. Survival patterns can include merging with somebody else, like not knowing yourself. So you just become that missing piece in their life, and then you get the love from that. Survival patterns can be enduring or not knowing when to say no or yes. You just go along with the flow, or secretly resent the flow and then do your own thing in the background. Another survival pattern can be aggressively barging your way through life, barging your way into people's worlds and lives, and assuming that they love you for who you are, but really they're just terrified of you. They're scared of who you really are, so they're just blindly obedient to you. And you might deeply know that that love isn't real, and it can be a survival pattern that can make you very successful, and you can be looked to as a leader, but at the end of the day, you're on hyper vigilant for betrayal. And then there's um, holding back. So you can survive your life through holding back, where you don't speak your truth. You look proper. You maintain a proper conversation. You speak when you are spoken to. You wait your turn. And to not be proper, you might look down on someone who's not proper or who's not obeying the rules of life or the system or the matrix, right? So dating without knowing what you have done to survive will also make your relationships not work. And how you learn about your survival patterns, I've spoken about this book multiples of times. The Five Personality Patterns by Stephen Kessler. There's also a test that you can do if you jump onto my Facebook profile and check out the bio link there. There's a test you can do, which will give you your survival patterns for relationships. Okay. You can have survival patterns in business, you can have survival patterns in family, but when it comes to intimate relationships, there tends to be two specific survival patterns that will show up, and it will only show up in relationship, right? So something that might not be helping your relationships working or why your relationships are not working is because you think that how you are outside of a relationship is how you are inside a relationship. They're not. There's another nervous system program that gets initiated when you are in a relationship. Okay. So things that you might have worked on by yourself and think that you're relatively stable on and structured on will another set will show up in relationships. All right. Next point is polarity. And polarity is very hot and interesting in the Tantra space, Neo Tantra and Tantra. And polarity involves masculine and feminine dynamics. And what can show up here is that the teachings of polarity have been subtly distorted since about 400 BC, where they were separated into opposites, where you have masculine and feminine as opposites instead of complementary. And so masculine and feminine exist in everything. It exists in everything. What's happened here in the polarity space, particularly in polarity theory, in the relationship space, is that masculine is only reserved for men and feminine is only reserved for women. And that is a distortion. It's a distortion in polarity where a man will try and attempt to be more masculine by being performative, like performative leading or performative assertiveness, but then it's not his truth. Okay. And what happens is when you start performing either masculine or feminine, you attract other performers of polarity, of masculine, of feminine, because it's not who you are. So, what I encourage people to do, so how you can help your relationships work in the polarity space, is really coming back to who you are at the core. Who is the person, if you no longer needed to pretend to be more masculine or less masculine or more feminine or less feminine, who are you at the core? And that question can raise, well, who am I? Which is scary, which is why some people just stay in polarity, the polarity theory space. So becoming more feminine isn't going to naturally attract a more masculine partner if you haven't done the deeper work to unstitch why you are the way that you are. Why you are the way that you are. And polarity sounds very attractive to people who are confused in relationships or are struggling in relationships because they're simplified dynamics. I say masculine, men, feminine, female, great. I need to be more masculine, therefore I'll attract a more feminine woman. No, I know plenty of masculine guys who cannot attract a feminine woman or a trad wife as the community goes, because they haven't dealt with their relationship with their mother. They haven't dealt with the underlying issue of why they are the way that they are, or the issues with their father, because sometimes it's an underlying family of origin dynamic that is stopping your authentic self from coming through. And polarity can apply a model or structure over the top that's trying to put a square peg in a round hole. And if you felt most of your life like a square peg in a round hole and you've tried polarity, then what's at the root of this is a fundamental identity issue of you not being able to feel comfortable in who you are. Yeah, thanks, David. I love that. That idea trips me out in and out of a relationship. Makes me think of authenticity and how that applies to different versions of me in relationships. Yeah, totally. And I've been the same, like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And I think what shows up here, particularly in some of the later age survival patterns when you start building them in the teenage years is that you start to make back doors to your relationships unconsciously. Where I know for me personally, trying to find an excuse of how I can break up with this person in future and not mention it to them. For example, I would say, she doesn't like how I dress. Therefore, as soon as she raises it, it gives me an out. That cool. You don't like how I dress. You know what? This relationship isn't working. Let's call this a day. It was fun while it lasted. And that would usually happen around the 3 or 6 month mark for me after the honeymoon period's expired. And then the 6 month mark is when more attachment injuries can come up. And what can show up from that place is an underlying despair of why can't I make my relationships work? Because as soon as you start getting in one, you're automatically trying to think of a way out. Oh, spirituality was another one for me. Like if I was with someone who didn't like the same spirituality that I liked, I'd be like, cool, you know what? It's a back door for me. The back door. You don't know all the stuff that I know about spirituality. Therefore, as soon as you mention it or try and argue with me about it, I'm out. I'm out. The next one here is attachment theory. And attachment theory is an important one, and it's not a destination. And you'll find many relationship coaches and therapists talk about attachment theory because again, it's a scientific lens that's very attractive. It's got lots of studies. It speaks to a connection it's a bridging connection between why relationships don't work and what happens in earlier childhood. But what also shows up here is that it's still within a scientific lens and doesn't tend to the underlying survival patterns that's there. What I've found that shows up is the anxious people and secure people get like a good thumbs up, but then people who are avoidant get put on a lower tier, right? Secure and anxious people are kind of like, oh, we can make things work. If you're secure and anxious, you can kind of make your relationship work, right? But if you're avoidant, like snub your nose at an avoidant person, right? And that's the attachment theory community. But avoidance is such a double bind, especially disorganized attachment, where you do want a relationship, but then so you go and find one, but then you get in one and all of your attachment stuff shows up, which is why attachment theory is very attractive when you're not in a relationship. But when you get into a relationship, it's crazy making because I remember a time when I was having my attachment injuries were coming up in a relationship. And she kept sending me all this stuff about avoidance, right? All it did was just shame me, made me feel worse about my life and my relationships. And then I felt guilty that why can't I make this work? I even went to an attachment theory specialist and had a number of sessions with her, and she helped me intellectually validate what happened to me as a child, about how I was raised, but still couldn't get to the root of the issue of why I was avoidant, why or dismissively attached and or disorganized attached, where I would do my best to get in a relationship, pull out all the stops, pull out all the cards, like really show up. But then once conflict hit, in particular, conflict and or I needed space and or there was something that I wanted to do that ran in conflict with what we wanted to do as a couple or what she wanted to do as a couple, all of my attachment stuff would come to the surface, right? I didn't know how to ask for space, which is very much an avoidant thing. We don't know how to ask for space, right? It can be a real challenge. I just need some space. Give me an hour. Give me 2 hours. Give me a day. Give me a week. I need to get away. And sometimes you need to lean into that and be like, I feel trapped in this relationship, And then you can in that feeling trapped, there can be if the partner is willing, a reconditioning of the central nervous system. Well, okay, cool. I hear you feel trapped. Well, it must suck for you. It must be really confusing. Well, like, do you know what you want to do? Like, what would make you feel less trapped? So, I actually don't know for now. Maybe just some space. Great. Great. Well, I'll tell you what, why don't you just go take some space, right? And to give a personal example between Cassie and I, when we first started courting, uh, we were I could see that she was creating tension in the relationship, like just picking at things, right? And I knew what her survival pattern was because I can read body language and I can just tell straight away. Like, do you just need some space, Cass? Do you want to go like spend a couple of days down with your parents and just like get out of the house? Because we were in a share house, right? We were living together effectively. Just wanted some space. She said, "Oh my god, I think that's just what I want, some space." And she cried, right? And then she went to see her parents, came back, and she was fully recharged because no one's pointed that out to her, right? And I have the space to be completely okay with being secure in myself. Her needing to get away from me didn't threaten my identity, right? How did she receive that? Yeah, she loved it. She absolutely loved that she got it. She absolutely loved that someone saw her enough. And in her upbringing is more neglect or more overparenting, right? But not real presence, okay? And presence is a reoccurring theme in making your relationship work, okay? And if you can be present, a lot of your relationship stuff just naturally goes. Presence is a fundamental key in all areas of life. But I'll get to that at the end. So attachment theory, useful waypoint, not very helpful destination. So, like I said, people that speak about attachment theory, I think I genuinely, honestly believe that they're helping people. And I think it does at some level to be able to talk to certain injuries on the timeline or knowledge level of understanding why your relationships aren't working. And it won't help you in the long run. It'll keep you stuck in a loop of trying to get to security, and you can't do that theoretically. All right. Non-attachment. This is more of a spiritual philosophy, okay? Well, you just don't get attached. I don't get attached. Right? Very Buddhist philosophy. And expectations, non-attachment and expectations, they go hand in hand. Where you can get upset at someone in a relationship, and then someone will gaslight you and say, "Oh," or maybe it's not gaslighting, maybe it can just be a conversation. So, well, that's your expectation. And yes, some expectations do need to be explicitly stated. And being non-attached leads to continuous disappointment and a backlog of disappointment. Okay. So what I find in people that use non-attachment as a cure in the relationship space is that they have a backlog of disappointment. And it can be to feel disappointment can be devastating when you depending on how long you've been using non-attachment for. It can really reduce you to a bit of a bumbling mess when you get that insight and then you feel to the depths of where you've been let down, when you've let people walk over you. Right? I'm not attached, they can do as they please, This is where people can lean into polyamory, but not really have the foundation in themselves to have the secure boundaries. So they go into non-attachment, right? So non-attachment can be useful in some areas of life, particularly to get clarity on something. If you're stuck on trying to find a solution, or you're stuck on trying to working something out, non-attachment or letting something go can be very useful. However, if you're looking to create uh, uh, a committed, devoted relationship with someone that is your person, like your best friend, like an attractive friend, where you have an exhilarating time together, then non-attachment will be a detriment in the long run because you do need to be attached to what someone has said, because that's your honesty check, that's your reality check, that what they say they're doing is what they're going to do. Okay, and that's integrity, right? So someone who speaks to non-attachment and also doesn't speak to integrity, uh, like I said, these people I think are deeply wanting to help people, and at some level, they can be subtly a few degrees off the truth, which is why your relationships could still be not working. The next point I have here is forgiveness. Why your relationship might still not be working is because you're forgiving way too fast. Okay. People that forgive too fast do not stock take and inventory just how hurt they can be and what genuinely needs to be said to the person. And like there's a prayer, the Ho'oponopono prayer that I see that gets floated around in the relationship space. You just got to forgive them. Just say the prayer and you'll forgive them. It's not how the body works. It's not how truth works. Okay, uh, to forgive someone ad infinitum is self betrayal, because what's happening here is the person is really showing their true colors. The person that is you're partnered with potentially at the time is showing you that they either do not respect themselves, therefore they won't respect you. So keeping on forgiving that behavior out of some ideology will leave you self-abandoned in the long run. And I find that with people who have attracted narcissists is that they've bought into that always always forgive ideology. And what happens is that forgiveness eventually lands you in a relationship with someone who takes advantage of that, even if it's unconsciously. They just know, oh, they're a pushover. Yeah. Unconsciously, I can say anything to them. Unconsciously, I can treat them however I want. Unconsciously, it doesn't always have to be unconscious, right? Yeah. The difference between genuine forgiveness, authentic forgiveness, compared to shallow impulse forgiveness. And impulse forgiveness can be you don't want to feel the anger, you don't want to feel the guilt, you don't want to feel the shame of being treated like less than what you are. Okay. All right. Next one is red pill, relationship red pill. And what I find from red pill type communities is, you got to find someone who's truther, anti-vaxxed, not vax, sorry. They're all about the health and wellness. They're all anti-government, anti-system. They're all about making their own money, grinding. And while that can be attractive because it speaks to hyper independence and sovereignty, red pills has a bit of a crossover with the sovereignty movement. Um, at the end of the day, it's all who are you really aligned with? Because the red pill and that style of relationshiping um, puts tends to put the man on the pedestal, and then sees the woman as less than, and then in that dynamic, the that hierarchy that is created there is not healthy to raise children. If the partners can't see themselves as unique, unique and equal in a cosmic sense, then the relationship will be like a three-legged spoon race with four legs. You will not be able to create a solid foundation to build a long-term nurturing relationship for your children, and you will find that in the long run that the ideology actually crumbles in on itself because the inadequacy that's been compensated for through red pill isn't being tended to. So I find that red pill does avoid feelings of inadequacy, which is a childhood injury. Like you're not good enough. Okay, you're not good enough for your mum, not good enough for your dad, not good enough for school. You're inadequate. So there's an overcompensation I find in red pill where it leaves your core self a shadow of who you really are, a ghost of who you really are, and then you just attract people in general who are also performing, who are also ghosts of who they really are. So in the long run, the red pill might look good from the outside, but when you actually get inside it, I don't think there's much honesty. I don't think there's much truth in there. It's more about protecting and shielding yourself from feeling any inadequacy. So you keep the relationship together to avoid the inadequacy, or you'll project onto the partner, oh, it was their fault. It was their fault. They weren't red pill enough. They weren't this enough. Therefore, the relationship. I just had to end the relationship. She wasn't red pill enough for me. She wasn't enough. She wasn't, or he wasn't enough red pill for me. Okay. Vulnerability does not equal honesty. Now, in the more spiritual space, in the more conscious intellects community, you'll find that vulnerability is spoken very highly. And if you look at the definition of vulnerability, it's a weakness, okay? And there's a subtle distinction here between vulnerability and honesty, okay? So vulnerability can be quite gushy, okay, where you're actually not emotionally aware of what's going on for you, and sometimes you need to go through that phase, because if you weren't allowed to be that as a child, there needs to be a maturity, a backlog of maturity that needs to happen for you to be completely vulnerable, like the goo goo gaga type energy of conversation. And I find that people who are stuck in the pre-verbal stage or in their relationships have a really a lost sense of who they are, and they tend to overcompensate by giving to get. They give a lot of love, hoping to get something in return, and that's where vulnerability is, where it's too much. You're overgiving, you're oversharing, you're overcommitting, right? Honesty and truth is a felt sense. Okay, there's slightly a subtle bit more of a backbone to it. It's felt in the body a little bit more, and it comes pre-wrapped in compassion. It comes pre-wrapped in compassion, okay? Comes pre-wrapped in love when you're honest, right? Because you can speak to someone honestly with love, and it lands much more than trying to be vulnerable, okay? Now, I know Brené Brown talks about vulnerability, and there was a huge wave through vulnerability, right? Where people say you got to be vulnerable. Men need to be more vulnerable. Toxic masculinity is not vulnerable. Okay. The 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 barrier here is that Im un unprocessed emotion or unprocessed sensation can be directly linked to the voice, and it's just a feed of information, a feed of emotional information. And to cut that entire thing short, to bypass that whole process, it's just a sensation. So you can be deeply honest very succinctly, and you can communicate what's going on for you in a few sentences than having to get stuck in this vulnerability piece. And yeah, it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable being honest, right? Vulnerability can, you can get a bit, blah, blah, blah. Honesty requires a fuck. I gotta say this. All right. Like when I've broken up with partners before, it's like, hey, the relationships were going great. The hardest relationships to break up with are the ones that are going great, but that the trajectory is off, right? You know that the truth is subtly off, right? There's the hardest ones to break up in, and I've done that, right? Where there's nothing outwardly crazily wrong with the relationship. And she's not cheating on me. Um, you know, we do have a similar vision together, but those are the hardest ones where you just know deep down, this is actually not for me. This is not for me. This started as something that I was curious, and it progressed beyond. I didn't actually have a plan of where this relationship was going. Now it's gone to a point where actually I don't want this anymore. I just need it to end, right? And those conversations can be the real hardest, where I love you and I care for you, and I'm not going to be with you. I'm not going to be with you. I know I promised of all the future we're going to be together, and I'm not doing that. Right. And that honesty can land like a ton of bricks. And he's got to be with all that, you know? And I think connection is a real key in relationships, including how they start and how they end. So, how you end a relationship can set the foundation for how you start the next one. All right. What can also show up and why your relationships might not be working is the void of loneliness, which can also be attached to the void of purposelessness. Okay. Where if you're lonely and if you don't know how to be with that loneliness, then there can be a temptation to want to rush to something else to fill that aching, that skin hunger, that thing inside us, which is why I don't recommend people get on dating apps, because they can be that distraction to feeling with the to being with the loneliness. And they're so easy to download, they're so accessible. You can also get that lust high of like, looking at someone and fantasizing that little bit. It's like, oh, wow, she's beautiful, or he's cute. I could start a relationship with him. So there's also that little bit of dopamine hit that temporarily sugar fixes the loneliness. Okay, And then underneath that loneliness, there can be a real purposelessness. So why am I here? What am I doing? What am I really here for? And what's my spiritual journey? Like, do I have a spiritual practice? What's my philosophy for life? Right. And I find I tend to attract people who are spiritual, whether it is they believe in one of the Abrahamic religions or Buddhism or something. They do have an underlying philosophy for life. I've never attracted an atheist before. I'm always open to new things, but I find that people that come to me do come with a spiritual philosophy, which is why some of the techniques that they've been using they get hooked on, like polarity, for example. It speaks to masculine and feminine, which you could put on the same label as Jesus and Mary Magdalene, right? Or Joseph and Mary, right? They're the traditional masculine and feminine models, right? Then what I also see with the purposelessness piece and what am I really doing here? Who am I really? Is that to feel that, I think to come out the other side of that requires some kind of spiritual connection. I know for me, I've been going through the I Ching, the Oracle of the Cosmic Way. And for me, it's really helped ground in for me just how much of a gift life is. And when I see life as a gift, not as something that I was entitled to, not as something that was just handed down because mummy and daddy had sex and here I am, it's actually a gift from the cosmos for me to be here. And I'm like, oh, wow, a gift. A gift can be given and it can be taken away, right? So by me reframing my life that way, it also helps me feel resourced. Because if life is a gift and you take care of it, then there's more things of the invisible world that want to help me reiterate that. There's more things there that say, hey, John, really looks like you're cherishing your gift of life right now. Here's some more. Here's some more. Like miracles and gifts are the default way of the cosmos. Okay. And I think through moving through what we're moving through right now, more people are understanding that the default way of life is full of synchronicities, miracles, and gifts. It's not, they're an absence of those means, am I on the right track? All right. Am I on the right track? Which is why I love working with people long term, is because they start to see, oh my God, John, I bumped into this person. John, I just got offered this job that I had no idea I actually really wanted. Right. For example, had a client send me a message voice note to me today. Her father died of dementia, and she's been taking care of dementia patients, and she's disgusted at how dementia patients get taken care of. They just want presence. Dementia patients just want presence. Just want you to be there. Okay, talk to them. Right? There's consciousness there, but mainstream medicine, a lot of the research on dementia and Alzheimer's is very old. So the treatment plans are outdated. Right? But she got offered a job from someone that she connected through at yoga because she loves yoga. Right? This is the kind of connections that can happen when you're living. This is how Cassie and I met. We were both living our lives to the full, and we met in that intersection. Okay, when you love your life and you're doing things that shows life that you love it, you naturally meet the person or your person. Okay, and that can be your person for right now, or it can be your person till your deathbed. That's what's available here with true love. That's what available when you truly love yourself. And for me, I did need a spiritual practice to help bolster that. Like, yeah, wow, I'm so gifted. Wow, I'm unique in the entire planet. There is no other John out there. All right. My unique expression. I'm not special. That's the distinction here. I'm unique. There's a subtle flavor between special and unique. I am unique. Anybody that is watching this is unique. Anybody that's not watching this is unique. Okay. They're unique. There's a different flavor there. So, in that, you have your unique essence of truth of what you're here to share, what you're here to deliver. And that delivery doesn't have to be in front of a stage, or online or in a book. It can just be you in your essence. Your presence does that, right? What might also be impacting why your relationships aren't working is when you start doing some psychological work, you can see how you've been putting your parents on pedestals while ignoring what you genuinely went through as a child. And what shows up for people who tend to be a little bit more well off financially or middle class to upper class is neglect. Neglect. And neglect isn't spoken about much online. It tends to be a lowercase t trauma, lowercase t trauma. Right? The capital T traumas are like post-war immigration, sexual abuse, sexual assault, all that kind of stuff. But neglect is one of those pernicious ones where you are the invisible child, right? The invisible child. Your emotions are a hindrance. Who the challenges that you're putting to your mum and your father and your mother through your assertion of your willpower as a child is an irritation. Therefore, we need to control you, put you down, put rules in place, punish you, etc., etc., etc. So, in that early childhood neglect, and neglect can also show up as just absent parenting, where they just put you in front of the television and just let you learn from mum and dad on the TV, whether it's Sesame Street or Play School or Bluey or whoever that's on the TV right now, Rugrats. And while those parents at that time can feel like they're parenting because you have a house over your head and you have clothes to wear and a school to go to and a car to drive in, emotional neglect really does show itself in a relationship. It really does show up in a relationship where if you're talking and then the partner just disappears into their head, or you're talking and they're tracking the conversation, trying to find something wrong with the conversation, or you're talking and they're trying to compete with you, that's not presence, okay? Presence is listening, deep listening, almost tracking the tonality in how your partner is speaking. And the same thing in the inverse. And being able to feel, being able to listen to the common senses in the body. Like your body is a Swiss Army knife of senses, whether it's sight, smell, taste, touch, all the sensations, disgust, whatever you're feeling, whatever you can't digest, like burping or something else. Your body is always signaling to you what it needs or what's coming up or what needs to be spoken to. And you find the correct things to say, right action. You find the correct and right things to say in the moment by presence, by just deep listening. Sometimes you don't have to say anything. Like, for example, with Cass, if she's talking to me about her emotions or what's alive for her, I'll ask her like, "Did you just want me to listen or reply to that, respond to that, reflect to that?" Do the same with clients. Because there can be a part of me that wants to like jump in and give my 2 cents worth or, recommend a podcast or something, right? So being present is the one of the main fundamental keys to making your relationships work. And what pulls you out of presence is capital T and lowercase t trauma, which influence your survival patterns of how you've got here, where you're going, your trajectory, like your maps of where you're going. And to identify where you lose presence requires being aware of the breath. And you'll notice when you lose presence, you hold your breath. Okay. And you'll also notice when you lose presence because your mind will start arguing with you. The inner critic, which is really just the ego in fancy dress, the inner critic will come out and berate you. And the ego works both sides of the fence to pull you out of presence. For example, like you might be relaxing, feeling a little bit bored. Instead of being with the boredom, you jump on your phone. You jump on some social media. You see an article on social media that activates you at some level, and you start going into an argument or composing a comment or something that you can feel is not who you really are, but you have to put it in there, right? And I've done this so many times where I'm just chilling, and I'll be like, I'll feel a hit of boredom, and instead of just being with it and enjoying it, I'll jump on my phone, jump on Facebook or Threads, and then start composing some post in ChatGPT or a reply in, to get back at them or compete with them or something, right? And again, this can boil down to just not being with the discomfort, or somebody posts something and I want to shit on it, right? Which is an inferiority, superiority, inadequacy thing, right? Totally like possession, Dave. Totally like possession. Something just comes over you. And just while you've mentioned that, I think it's important to speak to is like in the context of possession. And for those of you who are familiar with possession, who are watching this on the replay or watching it live, is that something can really come over you, right? And I've had clients before and friends before who have had like alcohol addictions or sex addictions or um, narcotic addictions, where and food addictions, where something will come over them and then they'll just lose presence. And before you know it, they're in a brothel. Before you know it, they're nose deep in a few lines of cocaine. Before they know it, they're halfway into a chocolate cake. Or they're calling up their dealer to get a delivery, right? And this thing that takes over you can be spiritual. It can be something that is feeding off you. And I think it's important to put a pin in that sometimes it doesn't matter how much willpower you have. Sometimes you just need the presence of something that can move possession things out of your being, which can be a god, can be in Islam. They have the jinn, and you can see a rabbi that specializes in that. You can cast things out in the name of Jesus if you're skilled with that, and sometimes they come back because the authority isn't real for you. For you, you need to go on your own journey. You might need your own to discover what your connection is with these invisible things, right? And at some point, you'll find something that works for you when you're sincere. Sincerity and presence will place you in exceptional stead in your relationships. So if you are sincere about doing the inner work in order to make your relationships work, if you are present with your relationship, if you devote yourself to yourself, you will naturally find your person. You will naturally find your person because you're emanating love at such a deep level that the universe it's how it works. It's it's physics. When physics gets there, it's physics. It's a form of attraction. Love is attraction. When you love yourself, you will naturally attract the same love. And when you hate yourself, you naturally attract the same hate, which is why some of these relationship theories, and if you caught the start of this, people who genuinely believe that they're helping people with some of their relationship advice that's out there, the mainstream stuff that's notarized by institutions or influencers, if they don't deeply love themselves or understand the mechanics of love and attraction, then you're communicating to someone who doesn't love themselves or doesn't feel that they are worthy of love. They'll keep on attracting that hate, the opposing forces into their life to learn the lesson. And it's not personal until you realize that the advice that you've been listening to isn't unique for you. Okay. And that's when you start to listen to your own compass, listen to what you value as a person, listen to your own truth, which is a common sense feature. It's a feature of the body. The body has its own truth. And the more you de-armor the body and connect to the body, whether through body work or being around people, being aware of the tensions in your body and just dealing with it and feeling the feelings that come up from that, the more you're aware of your body, the more of your common senses come online again. Because in childhood, when you are shamed for being who you are, when you are neglected for being who you are, your body naturally armors at some level, right? You go and say a thing to dad, your dad goes, "Get away, busy," oh, shock, or you get hit, even worse, you get a slap, a clout around the ear. Mum, if you're a sibling and you have lots of siblings, you start to feel neglected because your mum and your dad didn't prepare the ground for your siblings to come or prepare you to come. So you're being bullied by your siblings, right? All of this can show up as some form of armoring in the body that you weren't loved for who you were. You couldn't be loved for who you were. And I'd love to see in the future where that never happens, where that doesn't happen. And for now, where we are at is that humans are conditioned to be something that they're not from a very early age. whether it's to fit into school, fit into a family system, or fit into a culture. Okay. And when you have those kinds of conditioning, you naturally, well, you just naturally condition the person to be to be something that they're not. And that just naturally shows up in their relationships. Because if you can't show someone to truly love themselves for who they are, then they'll find people that will love them for who they are not. You will find people who will love them for who they are not. So, which is why it can be so confusing and crazy making in relationships when you don't do the deep work, is you just keep attracting the same people with a different face or a different area code or a different postcode because the underlying root of your relationship patterns hasn't been looked at. And it's a very quick and easy process to unstitch that and have a look at it. Feel whatever needs to be validated from all of your relationships of the past. Do the reality check of like how you're contributing to this dynamic. Am I the work that you've done, no matter how like you feel like it was transformative for you, it probably was, not to shit on it. There's still a little bit more, which is like the finishing school of getting the true person type relationship that you want. And then just create true love. True love. And then you emanate love in your presence. You emanate love wherever you go. It's very, very delicious. It's yummy. And when you know how you feel that in your body, then you naturally become attractive to anybody in your space. Not that the ego can get attached to that, but just who you are. You just emanate love. You're just a mirror for love. And I think that is divine, that is God, that is the cosmic way, that is cosmic harmony. And when you find that within yourself or through yourself, then life changes for you in a very big way. And if you've been listening to this, I'm going to wrap this up now. Thank you so much for listening to this. This was pretty much off the cuff. I had a few notes here, but off the cuff. I really enjoyed it. And I'm speaking from a different energy right now, so I'm also enjoying that too. And yeah, mad love, David. Anyone else that was watching this or watching this on replay, if you got some value out of it, make sure you throw it in the chat, and I'll make sure I have a look at the comments. Mad love to all of you. All of you, enjoy your May that's coming up, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.